The National Defense University is truly the chairman's university, and it is an honor to introduce our tribute speaker for tonight's honorees. He's commanded at every level and served as our nation's 17th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So would you please join me now in welcoming to the stage Admiral Michael Mullen, U.S. Navy retired.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you for what I would probably rate as the best introduction I've ever had, just because it is the shortest. And I do love all those songs, but I'll tell you, and I'm a Navy guy, so I'm inclined, but I love that Coast Guard song. Always have. First of all, I'd just like to say thanks to everybody that's here tonight. And in particular, those who are here and support the National Defense University. It is of strategic importance, not just to the military, but to the country. It is a university that has produced so many leaders in all our services, and in fact, in services around the world. And in ways that are sometimes lost, the NDU is the glue, and certainly the intellectual glue that keeps us together. And in these certainly challenging budget times that we all know, what I worry about is it is where we think, it is where we go to school, it is where we educate that sometimes takes the first hit. And I would just hope that leaders, in fact, would go in the other direction in these times as these wars wind down, so that we can understand what we've been through, we can sit back and develop the military for the future, take advantage of all we've learned, and spend a lot of time with the tremendous professional staff that runs that university. So I'm grateful for those of you who are here from NDU, as well as those that support NDU. It's a treasured institution. Tonight, I've got very specific instructions from McCraven, who I actually listened to for lots of reasons. This is not about him, but I'll get to him in a second. I'm not going to discuss bin Laden. I'm not going to talk about the SEALs. Actually, there's been far too much discussion about our SEALs, who I should remind, I have to remind this audience, who are all part of the special operations world, which is a much bigger world than just the SEALs. There have been too many spoken views from active duty and retired, civilian and military, too many movies, too many books. And those that I know that are in this community want only one thing, and that's to be left alone in the shadows. And we should honor that wherever we go. I don't have to remind this audience, but I will anyway, tonight, as we sit here and enjoy the company and celebrate very special people. We have some 68,000 men and women who are deployed in Afghanistan, some of whom may not see the morrow. We have a couple 100,000 deployed around the world, and we should always keep them and their families in our thoughts and prayers as they do the work that our country has asked. I'm not going to say much about Bill McCraven, but I will talk a little bit about this incredible community that I've had the privilege of watching grow literally personally since the mid-90s, when I started with just a small special operations SEAL team, a platoon actually, on a deployment. and I've marveled at who they were then and watched their development over a significant period of time. And I've had the great good fortune of being with them in both peace and war, and I've also had the great pleasure and treasure of being with many of their leaders, who I've come to know personally. And there are others that set this community on the right path many years ago, but there are friends of mine who are here tonight, and some who aren't, who have made such a huge difference from a leadership perspective. So this isn't just about Bill McRaven, deservedly so in terms of his award and recognition. But Doug Brown is here. Is Eric here? I don't know if Eric is here. Eric Olson is here, or I'm sorry, is certainly one of those leaders. Bill McRaven, Stan McChrystal, Joe Votel, although I saw Joe and I'm saying, Joe, what are you doing here? I know there's work to be done. And he just happens to be passing through Washington, which is something, when you have his job, he should not do as frequently as possible. But extraordinary leaders who have grown with this community and made such a difference in these wars. And I said many years ago, and I still believe, I think when all the books are written about these wars, that it will be the special operators who have been at the core of change and of success in how we fight as a military. And it isn't just the special operators, it is our entire military. And when I'm asked about the bin Laden event, I don't really talk about it. That night to me was a signature night, not just for the evolution of the special operations community, but indeed the evolution of the United States military over the course of some 30+ years. The best the world has ever seen, the young people who man these stations, men and women, are the best I ever had the privilege and pleasure to be with. And you have made our country so proud. In addition to, obviously, the inspirational leadership, I've seen a significant amount of accountable leadership in the special operations world in very demanding times and circumstances. And Bill McRaven, as much as anybody, represents that. At a time where accountability for who we are, what we're responsible for, and what we do is sometimes difficult to discern. And in that regard, standing tall in that responsibility, I've watched Bill and so many others be stellar examples for our entire nation. Many of you know this, and there are wounded warriors here tonight, that both Deborah and myself spend an awful lot of our time in the wounded warrior, families of the fallen, and families space. And we, for years, have modeled ourselves after the CARE Coalition, which is the coalition that had been put together by the special operations world years ago to make sure that those who sustained the wounds, and visible and invisible, of these wars are well cared for. The CARE Coalition still represents the best of the best. And if you don't know about them, you should. They are an example not just for those of us that know them, but quite frankly for the entire country. I know there are many of you from the business world here tonight, and I do appreciate both Mr. Kraft's comments about the support from the NFL, as well as your support. Spending now my time in the veteran space world, I would ask you to do one thing as a business leader, and that's hire a lot of vets. It's a really good bet. And I don't want this to come out incorrectly. I have always been concerned about my officer corps, but we're going to send about 1 million vets to communities throughout the country over the next 3 years. And the heart of that envelope are the non-commissioned officers. And we need to focus there and hire them and be very aggressive with your numbers. We now know the keys to success in this particular area, which is having vets on the inside, which is going to find them, which is keying yourself not just to a vet but to their families, because 50% of them are married, and aggressively hiring them in numbers and then bringing them in through a short to medium transition period. And it's a proven fact that they are a good bet for a better bottom line in any company. So I'd really encourage leaders to up your goals and be incredibly aggressive in that space, if you would. Admiral McRaven's a pretty smart guy. One of the most recent examples of that is he didn't show up the other night for the OSS dinner, which was a wonderful dinner, but probably was the longest event that I've been to in Washington. In fact, it honored Bob Gates, who stood up to give his remarks at 11:45 and said that he loved events that actually started and ended on the same day. But OSS represents the best of our intelligence world and the best of our operators. And one of the things I will give Bill McRaven an extraordinary amount of credit for is his leadership in integrating the special operations world with the intelligence world. And it is every bit the capability, every bit the command, every bit as potent as it was upon its inception. And we listened to a half a dozen stories that night, every one of which was remarkable from World War II, every single one. And what was very easy for me to do is sit back, know that literally as they were telling those stories, there were men and women out there in the special operations world that night doing the same thing, in the shadows where they want to be. So the legacy lives on, never better than the special operations world that we are blessed to know right now. The other thing, I had the pleasure, and I'll give Bill some credit for this as well. I was in Tampa the other day, and it's one of these things, you're not as important as you used to be when you're retired, because I'm not even sure McRaven knew I was in Tampa at his headquarters. But he chose to not be there. But I will tell you, I got to look at how he's looking at the future. And one of my worries is that we revert to 2000 as these wars wind down and sort of start from there. That can't happen. We need to pick up from where we are. And Bill is clearly laying out a vision for the special operations world that I actually found inspiring as well as visionary, if you will, in terms of the future. So he is a leader for our time in both war and peace. He cares immensely about his people and the families in the special operations world. He's a man of impeccable standards. He has set them, and we all need to know what they are and stay with them. He is Bill McRaven in uniform and out of uniform, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Only more demanding on himself than he is on those he leads. He's the right individual for a community that is in transition, for a community that needs to reset not just those in uniform, but our families in terms of the demands that we have asked of those who wear the uniform and those who support them. And an individual who, looking to the future, will ensure that our country will continue to be safe. You know, when you retire, you actually don't look back much. I'm a believer that, you know, there comes a time, and we all have to move on to make way for those who come after us. And Bill McRaven represents the best of who comes after me and my colleagues. And we look back really missing only one thing, and that's the people. But we do it knowing that we have full confidence in those that currently lead. The officers who lead, the enlisted who lead, and who do such great things in such a demanding world. So it is really a treat, a personal privilege, to be able to say a few words about Bill. I didn't say much about his family, but he would not be here without the incredible, incredible support that he has had over many, many decades of service. So thank you, Bill. Thanks for all you've done, all that you continue to do, and we look forward to continued great service, certainly from you, but also all that you lead. God bless you.